In this video, we're going to be talking about the 2005 350Z, or as it's known in Japan, the Fairlady Z. So this was purchased January 2005, and it is still going strong here in January 2022. So I believe it's the enthusiast trim level, if I remember correctly. Its engine has 287 horsepower stock. However, as you'll see later in this video, we've added a cold air intake that adds about 11 horsepower to that. So that makes the car similar to the Rev Up engine, which is the next upgrade of the car that came out in 2006. The car has performed extremely well over the years. It's been track driven a little bit. It's fun. It doesn't have any major problems. There are a few minor issues that we'll talk about later in the video, but overall, if you can find one of these, not only is it a reliable car, but it is a beautiful car to own. And we'll talk about individual components of this particular car in the various segments of this video. So let's start with this bumper. This is not a stock bumper. I actually replaced this when I hit a tire tread with the original bumper fixture. So I thought that was an opportunity to get a clean aftermarket bumper. So this is a generic one that looks like the factory Nismo performance level bumper that you can buy. If you look closely in the grille, you can see the cold air intake, the entrance to that, and that goes up and supposedly brings cooler air into the engine, which boosts performance, and we'll take a closer look at that under the hood. If you go up from here, one thing to note about these cars is the headlights do tend to fog. So this is the second set of original stock headlights on this car, so keep that in mind if you're looking for these. Also, if you notice in the front, the reflectors are clear. So the corner reflectors are clear. I believe the stock is yellow. If you're in certain states like California, that might cause you some trouble, but otherwise I think it's a clean look. If we move on to the tires, these are not stock. So these right now are Yokohama's, and they, I believe, are 255 45 18s. So the stock formation, all of the tires and wheels are thinner, skinnier, and it comes on 17-inch wheels, and they are staggered, so the back tires are wider than the front. However, here these are not staggered. These are all the same all around, but all the tires are wider than stock. So even though it's a square setup, everything's wider, so it does still grip better than stock. However, if you do drift or take it out on the track, the handling is a little bit different. It does kind of drift a little bit easier, but overall it grips better than stock. Let's pause there. Okay, let's talk about the rims real quickly. These are Rota rims. Again, they're 18 inches. And they are definitely lighter than stock. At the time, many years ago, these were one of the most affordable and lightest rims you could buy. So they're a great replacement for the stock rims. And again, they are lighter, which is very important for performance. If we come around the back, the exhaust is stock. So again, no issues with the California Highway Patrol if you're from that state. And the engine and the exhaust note is, has a great sound stock. So, if you don't really need to replace the exhausts on these cars for sound. However, you could get some performance gains by doing so. However, this exhaust is stock. Let's take a look at the trunk area, since we're at the rear of the car. Now, I did mention there are some minor flaws that this car has, and there's two of them right here. So this trunk lid is very heavy. So the first thing you're going to notice are the hydraulics that hold it up will go out, or if you find a used one of these cars, they're probably already out. So the trunk doesn't always stay up. And secondly, it's so heavy that this release mechanism no longer works properly. So to really release it, you have to either hold the button on your key fob or hold the button above the license plate down and then use your other hand to pull the trunk up. So you cannot open the trunk very easily with one hand. However, once you get it open, and again, these hydraulic lifts have been replaced, so and they're already probably a little weak. Once you do get it open, you have plenty of storage space back here. So some people complain about this strut bar across, but I think it's excellent design and kind of a trademark feature. And of course, this and the one in the front are great for keeping this car stable. However, it could limit your luggage options. However, I haven't had any issues with the things that I carry back here, according to this diagram above, which conveniently targets Japanese audiences and golf executives. As you can see, you can easily carry 2 pretty large golf bags, or, as I've done a few times, large luggage from the airport as well. So no, you're not going to have the space of an SUV back here, but you can easily carry your groceries or daily life kinds of things. And if you need to carry more than that, maybe it's a good idea to rent a truck or something like that. Okay, that's all I think we need to say from here. Let's look at the hood. So far, so good. Okay, so now I've popped the hood to point out some of the interesting stock and aftermarket features on this particular Z. So you have this V6 3.5 workhorse of an engine. Nissan uses it in all kinds of applications, so it's been very reliable. I've had no major engine issues with this car. Do note, if you do apply a K&N air filter like this one, you might have a rough idle as the ECU adjusts to it, but after that initial period, the car responded to this intake like it was stopped. And speaking of this intake, again, this is the cold air intake that I mentioned in the beginning. At the time of its purchase, and probably still so, it is 50 state legal. In fact, if you look at this sticker right here, it has a CARB exempt number for states like California as well. So that's one of the reasons I purchased this particular intake. And of course, the 10 or 11 horsepower gain was also very convincing as well. So this intake has a unique housing right here with a carbon fiber cover. Underneath, you have your typical cone intake that you would normally see. Maybe I can give you a peek without opening it all the way. You can probably get an idea. Most of you probably already know what these cone intakes look like. The beauty of those is you don't have to throw them away. You can clean them and oil them. They say every 100,000 miles under regular road conditions, but I'd probably recommend it every 30,000 or even more frequently if you live in a dusty area. Now, if you look at this metal pipe, this is part of the intake kit, and that is what goes down to, again, to the front where we saw earlier, where the cold air intake or cold air comes into the engine. So theoretically, that's how it works, but either way, I'm pretty confident in the horsepower numbers. Other than that, everything in here is stock. The only thing I'd like to point out is the front strut tower bar there, again, to stiffen the suspension. It's not as elegant or fancy as the one in the back, but it's there, and that's more than you can say for a lot of other sports cars. Let's take a look inside. And the first thing I'd like to talk about inside the car is this extremely comfortable driver's seat. This seat, again, this car was purchased in 2005, is extra comfortable. I've driven this on 6 to 8 hour driving stints, and I haven't had any kind of back pain or anything like that. It really cradles you. It has lumbar support. It's very stiff and firm, also great for the track driving. And to give you a comparison point, this seat is more comfortable than more recent seats that you'd find in the Toyota 86, for example. And I've proven that, having rented that car and driven it extensively. So if you pick up this car, you're in for a wonderful driver's seat. The passenger seat is a little bit more standard, so don't expect much from that. However, this is a driver's car, and it's all about focusing on the driver, especially if you're on the track. You can see more evidence of that if you look at the gauge cluster. So this is that classic Nissan gauge cluster that feeds information into the driver. So you have those 3 pods there, but to the left of that, you have the main gauge cluster. And what I love about it is it has the tachometer in the center, which is the most important gauge for when you're on the track. You can also set the shift light if you like. You can program that there, but it's just a really unique, purpose-built gauge cluster that makes this car unique. And I believe you'll see this on all later model Z cars as well. So if you scroll down to the bottom where the pedals are, you'll see it's a manual. So it's comes with a 6-speed manual, thankfully. We wouldn't have it in any other way. And you have these kind of aluminum pedals there, which are pretty nice looking, sporty looking. And if you go down, you'll see some Nismo floor mats. Now, these did not come with the car. The reason I got these is that the stock floor mats, which are plain, wear out really easy, especially on the driver's side. However, if you pay for the Nismo mats, which are a little pricey, you get a little plastic section or a plastic buffer where your feet are. So you're not going to wear out the carpet on your mats. And these Nismo mats have lasted almost as long as the car has itself. So if you can find those, they're a good bet for longevity. Now, let's take a look at the radio. Here's one of the problems I've experienced with this car, is that the original CD player broke at some point. So we've replaced it with this JVC unit. Seems to have fit in there really nicely. But if you are getting one of these cars and you care about your music, check out the radio, especially if it has a CD player there. All right, let me come around. And one complaint that this car has received that was quickly addressed in the Rev Up model, the model that I believe came out in 2006, are the somewhat lack of cup holders. Not a big deal for me, since you know, I'm more interested in driving than drinking things. But if you can see here, we've got the main cup holder here, plus in this compartment you do have 2 more cup holders. So that's been more than enough for me. And plus, I only drink water in the car anyway. I don't drink sodas or juice or things that could stain the interior. So I'm fine. However, in future models, they do have better placed cup holders, maybe more of them, so that's something to keep in mind. As far as storage is concerned, if you don't have a GPS unit like me, you've got storage right there. If you have a higher trim model, that's going to be your GPS screen. That door tends to stick, so be careful it doesn't open easily over the years, but it still basically works. And then you have storage here behind the shift knob. You've got some storage for coins, and again you have the storage back there, which has cup holders. Those cup holders are removable in case you need even more storage. Some traditional drivers complain about the location of the glove box in this car as well, and it's actually behind the passenger seat. So be aware of that. Again, doesn't bother me so much. And finally, you have 2 little compartments back there. Now, this car was made in the era of CDs, before you had Spotify, and even basically the iPhone. So these are designed to hold CDs, but you can put whatever you like here. And finally, as far as the interior is concerned, you have two power ports for cigarette lighter powered devices. One is there, and the other is in front of the passenger seat down there. And of course, if you put in an aftermarket radio, you will have other USB charging options. So that's the interior. Let's wrap up this video talking about the few final flaws of the car and then kind of an overall recommendation. So let's wrap up with a few of the minor flaws I haven't had a chance to talk about, and then overall I'd like to summarize and conclude why I think this car is a great deal even today. So over the years, you'll notice the interior materials, I'm not sure what material it's all made out of, but they do scratch easily. So if you have this car for a long time, or you find some old ones out there, do expect some interior wear and tear, either on the seats, but more so kind of on the plastic panels throughout the car. Secondly, the paint I think overall is okay. However, on the front of the car, you do tend to get a lot of pockmarking and specks of paint being hit away by road debris. I believe this happens on any car, but if you're checking out a Z from this generation, again, check those headlights for fogging, and just check the front of the car, as it tends to take a beating and the paint tends to chip away. So do keep that in mind. Lastly, I have heard complaints about the door handles, the silver door handles being a little weak or breaking. It hasn't happened on this car, but that's something to keep in mind. And also the windows are prone to jamming. That is something that has happened on this car that we've had to have repaired. So watch out for those things. However, again, I must stress that for a car this old, that has been tracked, that has been driven around the west of the United States, it has been amazing. The engine runs today just as it did the day it rolled off the lot. Again, it hasn't had any major breakdowns or issues or things like that. It is fast. It still outpaces most cars you'll find on the road here. It handles like a dream. It is fun to drive. It's a 6-speed manual transmission vehicle, and it is incredibly driver's focused. So if you're just looking for a great rear-wheel drive car where you can feel the road, feel what it's like to own an affordable sports car that is driver focused, this is the car for you.